Good morning, magandang umaga po. We are going to talk about the differences between dual citizenship, filing a delayed report of birth, and applying for recognition as a Filipino citizen. What are they and what are the differences? Stay with me. We'll talk about it. A dual citizenship is easy. You are a Filipino citizen, you came to the States, became immigrant, stayed here for 5 years, and then you decided, oh, I want to be an American citizen. Before you do that, by the way, make sure you are aware of the differences between being a citizen and not being a citizen. The tax consequences, your rights, etc., etc. But let's say you have done all that and you said, I decide to be a dual citizen. Philippines affords you the privilege of recapturing your Philippine citizenship. Because when you become a U.S. citizen, you're presumed to have abandoned Philippine citizenship. Or sometimes it's not even presumed. Right in the oath of allegiance, you say that you are abandoning Philippine citizenship. But you don't have to prove that one way or the other. You are already assumed by under Philippine law that you abandon Philippine citizenship. So, you lose your citizenship. Okay? So, Philippines gives you the privilege of being able to recapture your Philippine citizenship. You will also take an oath of allegiance when you do this, but the oath of allegiance in the Philippines for dual citizens now does not include you renouncing your U.S. citizenship. Okay? Now, that is opposed to if you are an American and you went to the Philippines and you want to be naturalized. When you get naturalized in the Philippines under the Philippine law, your oath of allegiance also asks you to renounce U.S. citizenship. Now here goes the difference. The difference is the United States does not give you the privilege of recapturing your U.S. citizenship. So American citizens who become naturalized in the Philippines can no longer get back their U.S. citizenship. Whereas in the Philippines, when you lose your citizenship because you became naturalized in the U.S., you can regain your citizenship by applying for dual. And you can apply for dual immediately after that if you want. Some people say, oh, that's being a traitor, that's being... There are so many arguments about that, and we'll let you to argue about that. But that is the dual citizenship process. Now let's talk about, well, suppose I have Filipino parents or parent, and I was born in the United States. What do I need to do to become quote-unquote dual? Well, when you were born in the United States, the law in the Philippines is different from the U.S. Under U.S. law, if you were born in the United States soil, you are an American citizen. So you have an American or U.S. birth certificate, you are an American citizen. Under Philippine law, you can be born in the Philippines, it doesn't mean you are a Filipino citizen. What establishes Philippine citizenship is the blood that runs through your body. You have to have a Philippine blood. So if one of your parents is a Filipino or Filipina, you could be considered a Philippine citizen at birth. Okay, at birth. So, what is the process now? So, let's go to the first one because to me that is the simpler way. If you were born in the Philippines, in the US, but you have a Filipino parent, and by the way, whether it should be the mother or the father will depend on the year you were born. If you were born prior to 1973, it should be the father. Okay? If your mother is Filipino citizen, it doesn't matter. You cannot be considered Filipino. You cannot be a dual. But if your father, this is born prior to 1973, okay? If your father was a Filipino citizen, you can. Now, after 1973 or 1973 and later. I have the exact dates, but we'll just estimate it. After 1973, it should be either father or mother. So if only your mother was a Filipino citizen and you were born after 1973, then you can apply for dual. Okay? Now, how do you do that? By the way, I'm sorry, you don't have to apply for dual. What you need to do is to file a report of birth, because when you were born in the United States, you have a U.S. birth certificate, and it's highly unlikely, most of the time, people here in the U.S. don't even bother reporting it to the Philippines. Therefore, Philippines does not have a record of your birth. Okay? So what do you need to do? You need to file a delayed report of birth. And you can file this even when you're already 70 years old or when you're just an infant. Okay? Technically, they say that you should file it within 12 months of birth. But not too many people know that, or do they follow that? Okay? For example, when my children were born, I had no plans on becoming a Philippine citizen again. Besides, at the time, there was no such thing as dual citizenship. So I did not report it. So now they say, okay, you have to file it, preferably within 12 months, but it doesn't matter. Even if you're already 70 years old, even if it's 50 years later, you can still do it. Okay? Then once you have filed the report of birth, you're now considered a Philippine citizen, official Philippine citizen, and you could request for a passport. Okay? So that is for people who were born in the United States. Well, how about people born in the Philippines with an American father or mother? What's your story? Here's the story. Under U.S. law, if you were born with an American father, you are considered a U.S. citizen at birth. Okay? When you're born, you're already a U.S. citizen at birth. Okay? So normally, the American father, just to document everything, will send a report of your birth in the United States. So there is a record or a birth certificate in the United States. Now, what happens to your Philippine citizenship? Now, keep in mind, when you do that, when that is done for you, you did not renounce. Unlike if you went to the States and you become U.S. citizen, you renounce your Philippine citizenship. You were an American citizen at birth, therefore you did not renounce your Philippine citizenship. So you're still considered a Filipino. So what's this thing called recognition as a Filipino citizen? And I was wondering about that too. And to be honest, I tried to research the internet. I can't find the reason you have to do that. Because you were born in the Philippines, you have Philippine birth certificate. Say, I'm Filipino. A lot of people fall into this trap not knowing that there is something you need to do. And under the Philippine immigration law, you keep on living there in the Philippines, you go to school, just like a regular Filipino. Then they decide later, oh, I want to go to the United States. There's a trap. You have to pay a lot of penalty for overstaying in the Philippines because you were an American citizen. So, the reason you need, I believe, this is the only thing I can think of, the reason why you need to apply for recognition as a Filipino citizen is it gives the people in the Philippines, the government, well, maybe it's just the money they want, I don't know, okay? But be that as it may, they want to be able to review your documents and see that, okay, you were born American parent, okay, so you became a U.S. citizen at birth, not your choice at birth, and when that happened, you did not renounce your Philippine citizenship, and you were born here, and they review your birth certificate in the Philippines, and they say, okay, fine, so you are considered a Filipino, and they issue that. When you apply for that, there is a hearing, and I don't know if it's before a judge or what, but there is a hearing. And once you get that, you can then apply for a Philippine passport. Now, this is the thing I don't know. When you become a dual citizen, that means you came to the States as a Filipino, then applied for naturalization, then you applied for dual citizenship to recapture your citizenship. They give you a letter. It's an ID. It's not a card. It's an ID. It's a letterhead saying certification, identification, or something. It should say identification. That is your dual citizenship ID. When you have a report of birth, you know what, my son did that. I had to see his report of birth. I assume that there is also a document. Is that sufficient for you to enter the Philippines as a dual citizen? I don't know. But the dual citizenship ID is sufficient for you to enter the Philippines. Although, I always encourage everybody to get a passport. Because passport is the original document that says you are a Filipino citizen. With the Philippine passport, you can go to Cuba, they will acknowledge that, but you cannot use an ID. Okay? Worldwide, they recognize what a passport means. Also, with the passport, you can also use that within the Philippines as an identification. It's easier to carry with you. I always save, and I suggest you do the same thing. You save all your naturalization papers in the United States. If you lose it, over $500 you have to pay. If you lose your oath-taking document or dual citizenship, you may also be in trouble. So you make sure you save that. But for traveling purposes, I just carry US passport and Philippine passport. It's a lot easier to carry, okay? And when you're in the Philippines, you can use it as identification for the banks or whatever you need it for. Well, being a senior citizen, you can show that. When I got my senior citizen card, I did not have my NSO. I have my passport. They accepted that, okay? Now, when you apply for recognition as a Filipino citizen, I don't know that they give you any sort of ID, but I will also encourage you, as soon as you get that, for you to get the Philippine passport. Now, let me show you the law in the United States just to substantiate what I'm talking about. I am the child of a U.S. citizen. Citizenship through U.S. parents. There are two general ways to obtain citizenship through U.S. citizenship parents: at birth and after birth, but before the age of 18. Congress has enacted law that determines how citizenship is conveyed by a U.S. citizen parent or parents to children born outside of the United States. The law in effect at the time of birth determines whether someone born outside the United States to a U.S. citizen parent or parents is a U.S. citizen at birth. In general, these laws require that at least one parent was a U.S. citizen and the U.S. citizen parent had lived in the United States for a period of time. Under the Bureau of Immigration Law, any child born of a Filipino parent may be recognized as Filipino citizen under existing laws. If your father and or mother were Filipino citizens at the time of birth and you wish to be acknowledged as Filipino citizen, you can apply for recognition as Filipino. Now, there is no 1973 breaking point in under this law. It's any time you had a Filipino mother or Filipino mother or father, you are considered a Filipino, regardless of whether you were born before 1973 or after 1973. That date is only relevant to dual citizenship application, okay? You must submit the following at the Bureau of Immigration Office in Magallanes Drive, Intramuros, Manila, because the presumption here is that you are still in the Philippines and you realize that, hey, I am not necessarily recognized as a Filipino citizen because I now have a U.S. passport. Bureau of Immigration form application for recognition as Filipino citizen. B. Letter request addressed to the commissioner from either your father or mother or both, or your legal guardian below the age of 18. This is also very important. Or from you if you're 18 years and above, with statement that either father, mother, or both parents are Filipino citizen at the time of your birth, and all documents submitted are genuine and were legally obtained from corresponding government agencies. Copies of your passport, the bio page, I'm talking about the U.S. passport. Copy of your parents' passport, also the bio page. If your father is an American, then it's your father's passport. Your birth certificate in the Philippines, and this is the reason why I say, gee, you really no longer need a report of birth because you already have a birth certificate. Birth certificate of your parent who must be a Philippine citizen at that time of your birth, okay? Now that is important because if both parents were American and one became, let's say, naturalized, or maybe one is a true Filipino but already naturalized U.S. citizen also by the time you were born, then you may have a problem. Affidavit of citizenship to be executed by... See, the thing is, it's important to have Philippine blood, but it's also important for citizenship to be in effect at the time you're filing, just like for dual citizenship. Okay? For dual citizenship, your parent, one of your parent, must be a Filipino as of the time of your birth. If they're no longer Filipino at the time of your birth, then you're out of luck. Affidavit of citizenship to be executed by your parent is stating that he or she is a Philippine citizen at the time of your birth if the application letter was executed by you and your legal guardian. Your Bureau of Immigration Clearance Certificate. You can get help from the Public Information and Assistance Unit at Bureau of Immigration Office if you have questions. Submit the required documents for pre-screening to the Central Receiving Unit and follow the officer's guide to get the order of payment slip. That means they'll show you where to make payment and such. Pay the required fees and submit a copy of the official receipt. To complete the process, you must attend a hearing. Again, I don't know if this is like a court hearing or what, but there will be a hearing. It's not an interview, it's a hearing. Refer to the official receipt for the schedule and venue of the hearing. If approved, claim your identification certificate, so they will also give you an ID, from the Office of the Commissioner, Bureau of Immigration, Magallanes Drive, Intramuros, Manila. There's the phone number. And so they give you an ID also, but I don't know if that'll be good as a passport, just like for dual citizens. Congratulations, you are now recognized as a Philippine citizen. Now, after getting your Philippine citizenship, I again would encourage you to get your passport because that is the official document of your being a Filipino citizen. I mean, travel document of your being a Filipino citizen. The ID to me is just an ID, only good to enter the Philippines and maybe to get out of the Philippines, but it's not a so-called travel document. When you go to other foreign countries, they will require your Philippine citizenship document. Now you might say, what do I need that for? When in the United States, it is more recognized, okay? There could be situation where a Philippine passport is more beneficial. For example, and I'm not sure today if Americans are still allowed to enter Cuba, okay? Or maybe they're just not allowed by Americans, but if you have a Philippine passport and you're coming from the Philippines, if you present a US passport, they may allow you. But let's say that you're not allowed. Well, you have a Philippine passport, so you can go and visit Cuba. Stuff like that. There could be some benefit to having a Philippine passport, which obviously, before you travel, ask the travel agent. Hopefully they're knowledgeable. If they're selling tickets to China, to Hong Kong, to Singapore or whatnot, they should be familiar with the laws in that country or in those countries, okay? So hopefully this helps you, and I'll appreciate it if you like the video, that is if you like it. And do share it with friends, relatives, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, I will appreciate it if you do, so you will get notified. Oh, and click the notification bell so you get notified of new videos that come out. Okay? Thank you very much, and please make it a great day.